You know, in general, it's really just a terrific pleasure to be speaking to nurses, because nurses I know are concerned about social justice. To note that there's two basic visions of society, if you want to put it that way. One vision is of society as nothing but a collection of individuals. You know, it's pretty much every person for themselves. You know, everybody's responsible for their own welfare. It's kind of an economic jungle out there. You sink or swim. It's a survival of the fittest. I'm sure you're getting the sense that this is the neoconservative vision I'm talking about. But the other vision, and it's a vision that I suspect is shared by most of the people in this room, and it's really very different. It's a vision of society as a community. And yes, we are individuals, but we're part of a larger community, and we all have responsibilities and we all have rights within that community. And we all, the rights and the responsibilities of everyone count. And together, we come together collectively to do things. We come together through government to do things that we can't do adequately on our own. So, for instance, we set up health care and education, all kinds of different systems, protection for the environment, etc., to do things better than if we were just left on our own. Typically, what governments do, at least what democratic governments do, is that they invest that money. They invest that in vital programs, in health care and education, family support, training, etc. And that makes a huge difference. It makes people more productive to have access to those things. I mean, think about it. That's why the rich do so well, because they have access to excellent health care. They have access to excellent social supports of all kinds, training, education, etc. They don't go to school hungry. So they develop to their full potential. Well, that's what social programs allow people to do. They allow everyone the chance to develop to their full potential. And that's not only great for everyone, it also means the society is more productive, because if everybody is operating to their full potential, obviously the whole society is going to be operating at a higher level of productivity. And in addition to this high level of productivity and competitiveness, we can see that in these countries the results are just astonishing in terms of greater equality. You know, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, those countries have virtually eliminated child poverty. It just doesn't exist in those countries. In fact, they've halved adult poverty to what it is in Canada and to a quarter of what it is in the United States. And by the way, it's interesting, you might note that in the Scandinavian countries with these high levels of equality, there's I think it correlates positively as well to high levels of unionization, because of course unions push for these kinds of things. So for instance, in Sweden and Finland, unionization rates are above 80%, whereas in Canada it's only 33%. In the United States it's 13%. The media often leaves the impression that we're all suffering from tax rage and that we're all kind of desperate for lower taxes, that all we want is a tax cut. You know, the truth is almost no one wants a tax cut. Now, that may sound surprising. Okay, sure, if you ask them, would you like a tax cut? Would you like some chocolate? Would you like some ice cream? Yeah, they'll say yes. But if you ask them, as serious pollsters do, to make a choice, do you want a tax cut or do you want your money reinvested in health care and education, overwhelmingly, by numbers above 80%, Canadians will typically favor the social reinvestment. So I would argue it's absolutely crucial that we not lose sight of what we have at this point, whatever the problems may be with waiting lists, etc. You know, I'm always reminded of the case of Larry Cowsey. I don't know if you've heard that name. He's a 58-year-old man in Louisa. He went into a bank and he slipped the teller a hold-up note. And then he went outside and waited for the police to arrive, and the police arrived, and eventually he was convicted and put in jail, etc., etc. And that story makes absolutely no sense until you hear that Larry Cowsey had colon cancer, and he had no health insurance like some 46 million other Americans. And then the story starts to make sense, because only by getting himself into jail was he able to get access to health care. Now that story, I only know that story. I came across that in the National Post of all places. Well, it is funny, I agree. It was actually on page 12. It was buried kind of inside the paper, and it was treated as a kind of cute little crime story. You know, the funny things people do that make them end up in jail. But of course, if you think about it, there's nothing, absolutely nothing cute about that story at all. It's absolutely tragic. And that story should be a constant reminder to us of how precious the system has and how very different it is from the country just on the other side of the border. In fact, I would argue that that story, rather than being buried inside the paper as a cute little crime story, that story should be blasted across the front page of every newspaper in the country.